Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we're discussing animal welfare laws with lawyer Camille Labchuk. Now, Camille, and for our viewers, this story is very disturbing. So, if you have any children in the room, you should probably remove them. I want to talk about a story that was recently reported in the Ottawa Citizen. It described a bestiality ring that was run by a man in the Ottawa Valley. And the accused, a man named Steve Cernosky, was accused of grooming a teenage boy, a 15-year-old boy with autism, and pressuring this boy to engage in bestiality with Cernosky's dogs, which were a large breed St. Bernards. And then he took images and extorted the boy. And Cernosky pleaded guilty to the bestiality and extortion. And the judge told the court, I see a lot of disturbing cases, but this case tops them all. It is truly revolting. But Cernosky was sentenced only to time served and is now out of jail with 3 years probation and a ban on owning animals. Now, the facts of this case are so disturbing and so tragic, and I'm concerned that there doesn't seem to be a guilty plea here for the abuse of a minor, of a teenager. Camille, what do you think of this sentence? Do you think this is enough? Do you think that the bestiality laws are tough enough? Because I think the man served 700 or so days in jail, and this seems to me to be a horrible, horrible crime.
It's honestly one of the most disturbing stories I've ever read, and I have done cases involving bestiality before. Animal justice has intervened at the Supreme Court about this issue, and when our laws were found to be insufficient, we helped get laws passed covering all bestiality. So I will say this is horrifying. One thing I'm encouraged by in the sentence is that he was banned from owning animals in the future. I think that's a really important
Is that
part of
not
this.
always the case in cases like this?
Well, until the changes that were made in 2019 that we were involved with, it actually wasn't even permitted for judges to implement an animal ownership ban in the future for a case of bestiality. So we really, really pushed for that change to be in there. So I really hope that will help in this case because it is so shocking.
And what are typical sentences like in crimes like this? I mean, I don't see a lot of convictions for this, but does this seem low or high? I mean, certainly one of the disturbing things is that there doesn't seem to be a conviction here for the sexual offenses against this boy other than the extortion charges. But do you have a sense of how reasonable the sentence is?
I Yeah, I think that bestiality sentences are always somewhat different because the facts of each case are different. And you see some cases that are obviously still very distressing, but perhaps not as on the high end of the scale as this one. So to me, this is one of the longer bestiality sentences that I've actually seen, but I think the case law is still evolving. I mentioned a case that we were involved with. That was a 2016 judgment from the Supreme Court that came out. I think you've seen courts and also law enforcement taking bestiality a lot more seriously since that time when it started to get more public discussion about the real harms that this offense causes both to animals and often to humans.
Yeah, certainly in this case, that is, there's the boy who this happened to, who's now 20 or in his early 20s, said that his life has been ruined by what happened. Now, I want to move on. I want to shift gears here because a lot of what we've been paying attention to and what the public pays a lot of attention to relates to pet animals. But that's obviously only part of the picture. What do you think gets lost when we move in terms of the public concern? What do you think gets lost when we shift from pet animals to farm animals?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's a really important one. Pets are so close to us. We live with our cats and dogs and rabbits and other furry or scaled creatures every day, and we see them and we feel concern over them. Farmed animals are kept behind closed doors in Canada, and so most of us never develop the chance to have a relationship with a farmed animal in the sense of getting to know what their personalities are like. Sometimes we see cows in the field as we drive by, and that's kind of it. But unfortunately, in Canada, we actually don't have any laws governing the welfare of animals on farms. So there's no regulations that say you can't keep chickens inside tiny, tiny cages their entire lives or mother pigs in gestation crates. And this is actually a step behind a lot of other Western nations, like most of the EU, many US states, which have passed these types of bans. So I'm excited to see more and more people starting to become sensitive to these concerns. And when they're shown the truth about what happens and some of the practices that are common on Canadian
Mhm.
farms, people really are motivated to be part of the solution.
Now, one of the ways people get that sense of what's happening on farms is through video documentation of what's happening on farms. We've got to go to break, but I want to talk about these ag gag laws when we come back.